unlike us, I think the countries of the Middle East are acutely sensitive to balance of power. The smaller countries, which are, tied into security politics, are much more sensitive to changes that take place. And they can make changes very quickly, unlike in India, or even for that matter, Pakistan.
So, this week in your column in Raja Mandala, you've spoken about how with the American withdrawal, you begin with that, and with the American withdrawal in Afghanistan, how the entire dynamic in Asia, West Asia up to South Asia, is going to be changing and evolving. So one of the things, you look at Afghanistan and you look at, say, the Middle East, the way there's been a rapprochement between the Middle East, the Islamic countries, and Israel to a large degree. How do you see that changing now with America's withdrawal and with this rapprochement? It seems almost as though it's this happens every few decades, I think, peace in the Middle East kind of opportunity. With the pandemic and this changing kind of thing, do you think this is a moment for less belligerence and maybe having some, openings to move forward?
I think even the normalization between a section of the Arab states and Israel was also driven by the fact that the US policy was getting to be uncertain and the regional actors were repositioning themselves. Now, with what started by Trump, who said, look, the Iraq war was stupid, to Biden saying, look, we've been there long enough, we need to go out. This, I think, I wouldn't say it is peace, but I would say it is at least damp down the conflicts with your neighbors. Because 3 years ago, Mohammed bin Salman, the crown prince, was saying, look, Iran was beyond the pale. But today, last week, he gave an interview saying, no, we must engage them. Turkey, which was seeking, trying to upturn Saudi leadership of the OIC, now is reaching out because their own economy is not doing great. So I don't think peace is about to break out, but people are going to adapt to the new circumstance. That with the US on your side, with Trump on the side of the Gulf Arabs, they thought they could confront Iran. But today, Biden has renewed engagement with Iran. So the region has to adapt to that as well. So I think, unlike us, I think the countries of the Middle East are acutely sensitive to balance of power. The smaller countries, which are, tied into security politics, are much more sensitive to changes that take place. And they can make changes very quickly, unlike in India, or even for that matter, Pakistan. Pakistan is having serious trouble in terms of how it got caught between Saudis and the Turks. While there's a debate about normalizing ties with Israel, they couldn't do it because of the domestic ideological and political opposition.
So, coming to Pakistan, by the way, everyone should read the movement you make in the piece. You start with the Middle East and in India and Pakistan. It will be on IndianExpress.com. It should be in the description for this video as well. Please have a look at that. For actual depth, this is just questions on the piece. But so in Pakistan, one of the things you mentioned in passing as well as in some detail in this piece is that actually it'll be interesting because General Bajwa has been trying to sort of quiet down at least one of its fronts, India to the east or now. And with the Taliban seemingly in a pole position in Afghanistan, once the US withdraws, that entire western border for Pakistan will become problematic because the Taliban never recognized the border, the Durand line. How do you see that playing out for Pakistan? And will it, there's two ways of looking at it. One, people are saying that, okay, if their western periphery is giving trouble, then sort of it won't spill over to Kashmir. Or on the flip side, if there's going to be this influx of now, frankly, freelancing extremists, which may be deployed on the Kashmir side. How do you see that playing out for Pakistan internally as well as vis-a-vis India?
Yeah, I think General Bajwa, when he gave the speech at the Islamabad Security Dialogue, he made it clear that, look, Pakistan needs to revamp its economy. It needs peace in the region, so they need to normalize ties. So I think his logic was understandable. But quite clearly, there's someone, it's not Imran Khan, because the civilians have no voice. Someone in the army or someone who's powerful was resisting that line. And that's why you had a series of articles criticizing him. And that all the talk about shifting from geopolitics to geoeconomics is not right, and that is not going to work, and that you are giving up on Kashmir. Because in that, there was a hint that, look, they could kind of find a way to sidestep the conditionality on Kashmir. You saw in the last few days that you have the Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi doing all kinds of calisthenics. He says, firstly, Article 370, that's Indian Constitution. We never recognize Indian legality on Kashmir. Therefore, it doesn't matter. To one of yesterday, now because of the reaction to it, he's saying, oh, nothing about Kashmir is internal to India. Yeah. So I think they have a problem internally. For example, same thing on Israel. Musharraf wanted to normalize ties. And before that, I covered it earlier, being that Nawaz Sharif wanted to normalize ties with Israel. Because they all see the advantage of actually, why should India have the freedom to have a monopoly of, affection of Israel? And that they, as a leading Islamic country, Israel would love to have normal relationship with Pakistan. But Pakistan could not carry that argument domestically because of the ideological and the religious opposition that has been created internally. So I think that's a problem. For example, with France, you let the blasphemy law take its course. You promise a demonstrating group, the Tehrik-e-Labbaik Pakistan, that, okay, we'll throw out the French ambassador to give us time. So 3 months down the road, they're stuck today. That because you've empowered the religious groups, European Parliament has moved a resolution saying they'll take off GSP if Pakistan keeps doing what it is doing on using the blasphemy laws. So now it's a straight, no other country in the Middle East, which is far more Islamic, is saying that, look, we're going to throw out the French. But internally, you have empowered these groups to such an extent, they begin to constrain the space of the army, because army started out by instrumentalizing Islam. But today the tail begins to wag the dog. So it kind of shrinks your own space. For example, on trade with India, they approve buying sugar and cotton from India was not going to, destroy Pakistan. In fact, it would have been economic, commercial sense. That's why the Commerce Ministry said, look, let's do this because you desperately need both at a low price. But the moment it became a political issue, they backed off, saying, no, we won't even buy a low price Indian item till Kashmir issue is sorted out. And within that, first reverse Article 370, then we'll talk. So I think they're trapped in their own. I think that's a danger most states will get caught in if you cede power too much to, extremist groups.
So as a follow-up, basically the same question, the final question is the same question about India. We've actually, like you say, we've been fairly nimble, especially in recent years with our foreign policy. Old sort of, you can say both Israel and Palestine, multiple visits, things like that, new friends in the Middle East. At the same time, is there a problem when is there our foreign policy is even now through the prism of Pakistan? So say certain things with China are limited both in international fora and bilaterally because of China's support to Pakistan, that even there is an inordinate weight for even on our, say, national interest because we take this antipathy with Pakistan so seriously.
Well, I think the Pakistan problem, if you go back to right from independence, the Pakistan problem in the Middle East was quite central. That is, when India, divided, Pakistan went to the Middle East and said, look, we are an Islamic country, therefore support us against India. India's strategy was saying, we are secular, we are for Arab nationalism, so this is not about religion, so we managed it like that. I think after 91, when India normalized ties with Israel, then it had to adapt to the new circumstance because the old lines of divide were no longer working. And because of India's economic growth, and because of Israeli-Palestinian dialogue and Israeli-Arab normalization, there was space to move forward. And India did that, and then Pakistan did not do it at the time. And now they find themselves difficult to do it. They could have done it easily in the early 90s. India has done it, so we're going to do it, or their own reasons for doing it. I think the challenge today for India is that, look, it's already, we've seen, you remember the United Arab Emirates invited Indian Foreign Minister Sushma Swaraj to speak at the OIC meeting. Yesterday, when Imran Khan was in Saudi Arabia, the Saudis have refused to condemn India's, Kashmir policy. I think the problem for India and Pakistan, they've elevated ideology. That is, for Saudi Arabia, look, their survival, their economic interests are far more important than extending solidarity to every Islamic country. After all, they don't criticize China, where they have interests. Similarly, they don't criticize India, but we have made it often, not at the official policy level. We assume, for a long time, we assumed the Gulf Arab countries were pro-Pakistan because they were conservative. Today, who is talking about moderate Islam? It is Saudi Arabia and UAE. Who is talking about the Ministry of Tolerance? They want to promote inter-religious tolerance because some of the Gulf Arab countries see religious extremism will undermine their authority, which is what Turkey, for example, was trying to promote brotherhood against the conservative monarchies. So it's a question of their security. So I think others have their own interests, but I think we too often framed it in pan-Islamism, Pakistan, pan-Arabism in terms of India, but today Arabs have been fighting with each other for so long. Then the Iran and Saudi Arabia had contradictions. So I think we framed it in ideological terms, North versus South. Oh, it is a contradiction between America and the rest. Well, the real world, it's always messier out there. And we don't give them the credit. Look, they can think of the national interest rather than thinking we need to be somehow ideologically correct when it came to the Middle East. But I think we've broken out of it. And Pakistan has a struggle today to do the same.
Okay. Great, sir. Thanks a lot. We'll see you next week then. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Akash.